Firstly, I want to say our chat is just on fire right now. You guys have just started something crazy. Everybody's calling Hayes a fraud, but you know who's not a fraud? Oh, you. I want to commend you, man. You look fantastic. What's the secret been?
You know what? I mean, I had put on a bunch of weight. I don't need to get into the long, drawn out story of why it happened, how it happened. But at the end of October, I got my brother handles my business stuff, and he sent me an email. He forwarded me an email. One of the guys that listens to Overdrive owns a gym at the 401 in Kipling. And he just sent a casual note because we always talk about fitness and blah, blah, blah. And he said, look, man, if you ever want to get serious, just come on in and I'll have a look at you and I'll help you. And I just got to a point where I was like, F this, I gotta change things up. So I called him, and the guy basically saved my life, prolonged my life anyway, because just a very simple routine. And he was very straightforward. He's a really smart guy. And he's a great guy. And he just told me, this is how it's going to be. And if you want to start missing stuff and showing up late and calling me and canceling, just don't come back. So he was no nonsense, which I had an appreciation for. And I see him 3 times a week. And gradually it's come along because obviously, I mean, Nick, I don't know what you do as far as your workout routine, but me and Rosie, we know how to train. Like, we know how to work out and the general fundamentals. So now it's getting to a point where he just needs to check on me once in a while. And I do it myself, and I'm actually quite enjoying it. So it's been a fun transition because, I don't know, being that size was no fun. I'll tell you that.
You're a lean, mean, sexy machine right now, O-Dog. You look like you could play today. So let's just say you're not, and you got to report on these Leafs here. What start of the back end? It's been a jumbly mess on the back end. Lots of guys have come in and done well, and guys have not done well and stayed in there. What do you see for the start of the playoffs with the Leafs defensive core? Who's playing? Who's not?
You know what? I think the key thing is, and Rosa, you know this watching these guys, both of you guys know it watching it, is there's not a lot of guys who are going to create offense back there. I mean, you look at Morgan Riley, and Brody has been that guy in the past where he could make plays, jump in the rush, and create offense. But Riley's basically the only guy. McCabe will do it once in a while. But if you're not going to do that, they have to pick out the 4 or 5 guys that are going to play in the playoffs, because Riley's obviously going to be a staple back there. And you can say the same for McCabe. But I think Sheldon Keefe and who's ever looking after the D-corps is going to be looking for guys that can be trusted back there, that can win puck battles and be tough in front of their net and bring something to the table and be trusted is most important. Because we saw last year, it would be like Florida would go in the corner, they'd come out with the puck. I don't know if you remember that Reinhart goal where he beat Brody behind the net and just wrapped it around, and it was too casual and too easy. So if you're not going to be a guy that's going to help out the offense and join the rush, you've got to be physical, you've got to be dependable, and you got to be trusted by the coach, and you got to be able to help out the goaltender. So whatever guys are going to do it, because there's a bunch of guys, different guys in the mix, whether it be Liljegren or, you know, the big French kid. Like, he's had some games where he looks pretty good. He just recently signed a contract. And if he can get the job done, Benoit, then he's going to go out there and play. They just got to find the right 6 to go out there and do the job come playoff time. Because as we all know, it's a different animal, and you got to play for keeps back there.
Oh, we constantly have the conversation on this show about the line juggling. In your playing days, were you a big fan of that? And what do you make of Sheldon Keefe? Like, every day, it's something new with this team.
I don't know. He's like a mad scientist at times. I think that I was fortunate enough in my good playing years where I knew I was going out there with Ron Francis as my centerman, and it's a good feeling because it's like I like doing business with Ron, and that's how I score goals, because he's an elite passer, and it was kind of a staple, and it was a comfort thing where I knew it's kind of probably like Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews. But I heard you guys talking before I came on. It's going to be interesting when he does come back, Marner, because it's like there's some players that deserve the benefit of the doubt, and he's a world-class player. And for a lot of times when a world-class player and a player of that magnitude comes back, it's like, here's your spot. Doesn't matter how long you miss, because in the big leagues, sometimes you're injured or you're not playing. You're in jeopardy of losing your gig. Someone else can come up and play well. But I don't think that's the case for Marner. I think he's earned the right. But I think there's got to be a lot of conversations involved, one with Austin Matthews, one with Mitch. And I think they're at a point where the only thing that's left for these guys to do is perform in the playoffs and get it done. And they haven't done that together. So why not look at a situation where it's like, you know, Mitch, if you want to come back and get your feet going again and play with Austin, that's great. But maybe come playoff time, it's something different. And I think it would be fantastic if you tossed him on the other line. You might get some different matchups. It might allow him a chance to succeed. But it's one of those things. You look at that top line, because all that matters for these guys is playoff success. That's all there is left to do. And the top line looks pretty good right now. Matthews is contributing. They're playing physical. They're hard on pucks. They're on the forecheck, and that's what you want. So does it make sense to just toss him back up there and say, you're the great Mitch Marner, you deserve to be slotted back there? I'm not so sure about that, because there's only one thing that matters and only one thing left for these guys to prove, is that they can get it done in the playoffs.
And do you think Marner could have a problem with that? I mean, yeah, you're the great Mitch Marner and you're going the first line, and he's probably would prefer to play with Austin Matthews because of who he is, but it's not like you're dumping him with some scrubs. You know, it's like he can see very clearly what that first line's doing. It's like, oh, here's John Tavares and William Nylander. Oh, no, pout party. Like, I got to think he's more mature than that. He's more of a professional than that, where he goes, no, I get what's going on with those three. Let's see what we can get rocking here on this other line and be a force coming into the playoffs.
Rosie, don't you think the best conversation is to sit everybody down involved and put the egos aside and say, look, guys, what do you think would be best for the team? Whether it be Sheldon Keefe and Tree and John Tavares and Mitch and Austin, and say, what do you guys think is the best for the team? And it might be good for the coach to stand up and say, this is what's going to be best for the team, and this is what we're doing. Maybe that just needs to happen to begin with. Just saying, our team moving forward, let's take a look at this first, and it doesn't work out, maybe we'll revert back to what we've done in the past. But for right now, the only focus is what's best for the team, because that's all that matters.
Where do you stand on Austin Matthews' pursuit of 70 goals? We've had this conversation the last little while about load management and stuff like that. I brought this up yesterday. They got a back-to-back against Florida and Tampa to wrap the season. Like, I'm not putting Matthews in a back-to-back that late in the season, but where do you stand on that conversation?
Well, I think he would have to have one of his heaters coming up here, guys, where it's like 3 tonight and then a couple the next game. And then you're like, okay, 70s is in the sights here, which is not out of the question for him to do. He's that good of a player, and he scores in bunches like that. And he seems like he's on the cusp of being in one of those heaters and trending on one of those heaters. So once again, it's a conversation. I think one of the numbers that we talked about, Brian Hayes brings it up. It's like, getting 66, because that would be more than Ovi in kind of the modern day game, and that would be a number. But it's all whatever he does kind of in the next few games, whether it could be, because I think giving him a little bit of time off before the playoffs would be great. I don't know how he feels or what he wants to do schedule-wise or workload-wise before the playoffs, but that's just another conversation. See what happens here in the next few games and see what the outlook is and what he wants to do. Because obviously 70 is a crazy number in an NHL season to rip home that many goals. It's outrageous. I've said before, I scored 41 one year, and I honestly felt like Gretzky. I was like, God, I'm scoring every night. I'm a machine. To have 30 more than that, 32 or 3 more than that would be insane. It must be a hell of a feeling. It must be the ultimate high in hockey just to have that many goals at this particular time of the season. So I think you'd have to see where he goes here in the next little bit and then kind of map out a plan after that. But once again, that's a discussion. Tree, Sheldon, and Austin, and probably Shanny, and say, what do we want to do here?
Yeah, I honestly don't think I have had that feeling even playing street hockey against my kids. I can't
Come on,
imagine.
Rosie, you scored some goals, buddy.
Off my ass, maybe. What's your thoughts on home ice? I think it's a pretty big no-brainer to want the home ice for every team, but the Leafs seem to have a little different vibe going with their home ice and their history and whatnot. How much stock do you put into where they finish up as far as that's concerned?
You know what? If the crowd could resemble kind of a mishmash of what we saw, I thought the crowd on Monday night, I was concerned about it going into the game. Is it going to be the standard Monday night where it was like coming off the high of the road game in Buffalo, which those fans are fantastic. And I wish there was some kind of way that they could get in the building every goddamn game, because it's amazing to see that. Like that's Leafs Nation. Everyone talks about Leafs Nation. They're like, oh, Leafs Nation, they sit on their hands and they don't do anything in their suits and they're drinking martinis. That was Leafs Nation down in Buffalo. And if they could ever get that into the building somehow, it would be fantastic. But it just seems like, and Tree described it as putting some snot on the roster, and it seems like that energy with Reeves can get cooking, and Domi's out there causing problems, and Bertuzzi's hitting people, and Benoit's taking people's heads off. And I've said it for 100 years, guys. Like, there's parts of the Maple Leafs history that should be tossed out because there's no winning involved. But one of the fabrics of playing in this market, I think you saw it with Wendell and Dougie. It's like people want hard work, and they want people busting their ass, and they want you to play hard and physical and finish your checks. It's one of the demands of people, regardless if they paid $200 or they went down to Buffalo for the game. So if they can kind of keep creating that energy, and Samsonov can be great and get people standing up chanting his name, then home ice would be a big deal. But if you go in there and you hear a pin drop, what the hell's the sense of even having the extra home games? It's just, I don't know. But I hope the fans at home continue to do what they've been doing.
Hey, the positive thing is that if they play Florida, I mean, you could overtake that building. I'm sure that conversation is going to come out, which should be a lot of fun to see. But I wanted to ask you about the Panthers, because we talked about it a bit earlier on in the show where, this time last year they were going on their heater, and this time they're on a big time cooler. I mean, they're 4-8-1 since acquiring Tarasenko, 4-7-1 since the trade deadline. Do you read much into that?
It scares me a little bit, because I don't mind this time of year to have a little bit of a dip, because guess what? There's been so many ups and downs, and quality teams with quality players and quality goaltending, they always seem to get it back on track. So they might just get their heads out of their asses right before the playoffs, which could be a dangerous thing. Although they've fallen from me talking at trade deadline day, where I thought they were far and away the best team. They were dummying everyone 5-1 every night. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like they were unstoppable. Bob was unconscious. The physical play, the way they defended, their timely goal scoring, everyone contributing. And now it's not that way. But I don't think the one thing about that group, they're battle tested, and they have a philosophy of knowing how to get it done. I thought for sure they were going to win last night in Montreal and just put a stamp on it and say that's the Florida Panthers. But they got their ass kicked last night again. But they could be scary if they get it together just before the playoffs start. That would be a dangerous thing, the Florida Panthers.
That was full Taco Bell diarrhea against the Montreal Canadiens. You got to win those games, and then Ekblad goes down. But you starting to get that feel again, man. Like, I won't lie, I'm getting dragged back in. I know every year we have this convo in Leafs Nation where you watch the team and you're like, fuck, I'm inspired. Do you get that feeling right now?
You know what? I always just say, guys, when are you going to just lay it on the line? Like, there's only one thing left for them to do. They're wonderfully talented players. You go from Tavares and what he's done in his career, and William Nylander, who I think looks different. He looks like he's ready to play big boy hockey. Remains to be seen if he wants to do it in a tough series against a quality opponent. But that's all that's left for them to do in the last phase of any kind of slump. Whenever I was in a goal-scoring slump or lack of success, I would just say, screw it. You got to go out there and let it fly, and that's what the playoffs is all about. They definitely got the talent, and they have to produce, and it does start with their big boys. But there could be just a different kind of energy and a different vibe where it might be a different approach and ultimately end up in different results. I hope that happens. Samsonov, as good as he's been, sometimes he causes me concern where I'm like, this is good. These saves are really good, but is it sustainable? Like, is it sustainable in two different aspects, guys, where it's like the quality of play and, oh, it's my birthday or something. Something just popped up there. Quality of play and stay healthy, because it seems like with the goaltending, a guy will go in the net and he'll play two good games, and then all of a sudden it's like the Edmonton game, groin injury or ankle or something, and they're pulled out. It's like, that's just not dependable. And you got to give the team confidence that guy, the Florida Panthers last year, they looked back there and said, Bob's ready to go and he's going to be great tonight. And he's going to stay in the damn net all night. And that's what you're looking for. Can one of those two guys that the Leafs have back there, can they do that? And not just for 3 games. It's for 2 months. Like, that's what we're talking about here. So that's going to be one of the question marks. Can one of those guys get in that net and play well for 2 months? Because that's what they need if they want to get to the ultimate goal.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long-form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.